Thank you, Vasudev, for this welcoming words and an introduction which has covered many of my positive points and not mentioned any of my shortcomings. Thank you again. So, it is my joy to share some thoughts on the Gita. For Bhagavad Gita is such a scripture, such a shastra. More we contemplate upon Sri Krishna's teachings, more elevating it is, more uplifting it is. Prapanna parijataya totra vetraika panaye jnana mudraya krishnaya gita amrita duhe namaha. We have for this session this evening here in India, and I find some from the Western Hemisphere here this morning for them over there. The topic that we shall take up now is, what does Bhagavad Gita teach? Jnana or Bhakti? I tell you, without really being humorous, Gita teaches Jnana and Bhakti and Karma and Yoga and 20 other things. Bhagavad Gita is like a huge garden with so many plants, so many flowers, and so many kinds of fragrance. Apart from the figurative expression, what I mean is Bhagavad Gita caters to varieties of human beings at different levels, vertically and horizontally. Vertically meaning going by level of maturity, horizontally meaning going by their taste, their mindset, their likes, their inclinations. Therefore, Gita teaches Jnana and Bhakti and many more things. But then the intent of this question is a bit more than just asking whether Gita teaches one of them. Everybody knows there are many shlokas highlighting the power of Jnana, and there are many others which underline the power and grace of Bhakti. But the question is, ultimately, on the highest plane, to give to us what we ultimately desire, moksha. Is it bhakti that blesses us with moksha, or is it jnana that puts to an end all our sorrow for good? Over there, I would right in advance say that the Vedanta's position is jnanad evatu kaivalyam. The liberation, the last stage or the destination of every spiritual seeker is through jnana. But that in no way reduces the importance of bhakti. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna emphasizes bhakti so much. After showing his cosmic form, Vishwarupa, doesn't he say in the 11th chapter, 54th shloka, Bhaktya tu ananyaya shakyaha aham evam vidorjuna Gnatum drashtum cha kaunteya praveshtum cha Gnatum drashtum cha tattvena praveshtum cha parantapa. To know me, to see me, to enter into me, in principle, as I am, tattvena, bhakti, which is very single pointed, ananya bhakti is the way. And everyone knows, spread across the Gita, large number of shlokas talk about the power of bhakti. Bhakti is so transforming. In the 9th chapter, Sri Krishna does say, even if somebody has lived very sinfully, api chet suduracharaha bhajate mam ananyabhak. Such a person who has to use a popular language, messed up his life very badly. Suppose Bhajate goes to Sri Krishna, goes to Mahavishnu with love, that person is transformed. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim rigacchati are the very, very reassuring words from Parthasarathi in the 9th chapter. And right in Sthitaprajna Lakshanas, which is at the early portion of Gita, for as you know, Krishna's teachings begin in 2nd chapter. And at the end of the 2nd chapter, we have a very, very beautiful description of a man of steady wisdom, though more than half of it describes people like you and me who are struggling to have a control over our senses, our mind, and so on. Right there, Sri Krishna does say that if we find the senses too turbulent, the solution is Tani Sarvani Sanyamya Yukta Asita Mat Paraha. Stay devoted to me. These senses will behave. Your mind will come under control. Anchor yourself in love of God. Therefore, I can give examples on and on. Chapter 14 talks of Gunatita, the one who transcends three gunas, and towards the end of that 14th chapter, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Sri Krishna says, Mam chayaha avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Whoever adores me with devotion that is unwavering, she or he goes beyond the three gunas. And in the 8th chapter, again he says, from Brahma Loka to the earth and even down under, everywhere you go, nothing is permanent. You return, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Brahma bhuvana lokaha, punaravartinorjuna, mam upetyatu kaunteya, punarjanma na vidyate. Come to me and your rebirth will be a closed chapter. You will gain liberation. No wonder there are schools of thought which therefore have emphasized bhakti and said that Hari Bhakti is everything. However, there are many other shlokas, maybe smaller in number, but their weight is something that we cannot ignore. In chapter 4, Lord Sri Krishna says, Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate. There is nothing as purifying as jnana. It is in that chapter only, in verses 36, 37, and 38, and then again in 42, he says, Jnana is like a boat. Sarvam jnana plavena. Plava is a boat. By the boat of jnana, right understanding, vrajinam santarishyasi. You will go across all sin. It is in that chapter 4 only where he compares jnana to be a sword. Jnana asina. Asi means a sword, khadga. And otherwise also, Lord Krishna talks about a totally different way of seeing where we are freed from sorrow. For example, right in the beginning, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, look, you are so puzzled, confused, sorrowful because you think that you are the body. You think that all these soldiers on either side of the on either army are bodies. Actually, none of them or none of us is the body. We are the indestructible Atma. Najayate mriyate va kadachit nayam kutaschinna babhuva kaschit, and so on. And the imperishable pure self, which doesn't have birth or death, is touched upon, which is avikari, which has no modification whatsoever, is presented by Sri Krishna, and he says, if you know your true nature, sorrow will come to an end forever. And in the 30th chapter, which is regarded as the chapter which has maximum thrust on Atma Jnana, pure self knowledge, Lord Krishna says, look, Arjuna, to rephrase him, the entire cosmos, entire life for that matter, is two things. One is Kshetra, other is Kshetrajna. Everywhere and anywhere, in you, me, and everyone, there is a field of the known and there is the knower. Kshetra is the field that is known, seen or heard or felt or smelled or tasted, whatever, and then there is the knower, that is Kshetrajna. And you and I would think, okay, so that man has his field and there is the knower. This lady has her field of knowledge and the knower. So this awareness, that consciousness, that awareness are all separate. The second shloka of chapter 13 is a Vedanta bombshell. Lord Krishna says, if you think that there is a knower here, there is a knower over there, there is a knower, someone who knows the field, yet another place, you are mistaken. I am the one knower in everyone. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. This is a shloka along with many other shlokas which provides a powerful support to the Advaita Drishti. It is one pure knower, the Lord Himself. The Lord Himself is the awareness in all of us. There is an erroneous perception where plurality seems to be the truth. When that error is set right, when Samyak Darshana, right seeing takes place, there is God and God alone. Unfortunately, Advaita Vedanta is misunderstood by some people, for they think, hey, here are these Advaitins who say, I am God. If we Advaitins were going around saying, I am God, we would not go to temple in the first place. Secondly, if we go to the temples, we would have entered saying, hello, Hanuman, I have come and I am God, okay? Does a single Advaitin, including the Shankaracharyas of Sringeri or Kanchipuri or Dwaraka or Joshimath, does anyone say, who professes Advaita, does anyone look at God and say, I am God? No way. There is Bhakti integrated into Advaita Jnana. Actually, an Advaitin, rather than saying, I am God, actually, first of all says, God alone is. This I in me is an illusion. This ahankara, this egoism is a mere fancy. It is just a product of thought. It is misconceived and so on. That is what Lord Krishna says, Prakrutehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashaha. It is the gunas which do, but when there is ahankara vimodhatma, karta ahamiti manyate. There is a shloka 3.27. This ahankara has been pointed out by Sri Krishna as a false entity. In the 18th chapter, he says, if you are free from ahankara, even if you kill many people, no sin will accrue to you, which is no way licensed to kill, but it is to show how the ultimate essential teaching of the Gita is a certain jnana, a certain understanding, a certain awakening, where we clearly see that this I, who is upset at times, who is in high spirits at other times, who thinks I am better than everybody at times, and at other times thinks, I am nowhere, everybody has gone ahead, I have failed in life. This I, which goes up and down, is not true. Last few days I have been reading a wonderful book which has made rounds in the West and now in India also is popular. A book by a very mature and gifted author, Michael Singer, and his book, which is popular for many years now. You may see Michael Singer on YouTube too. He is interviewed by Oprah Winfrey and professors of many distinguished universities and so on. Michael Singer says in his book, The Untethered Soul, that people are victims of mental chatter 24 hours, to be precise, when one is awake. When the mind is really tormenting us, even when we want to take some rest, the mind goes on saying this, saying that, do this, don't do that, and so on. And talking about the mental chatter, how this mental chatter in all of us persecutes us, makes us miserable, he says, nothing will free you from mental chatter. If you try to do something about it, you actually have to stay as the witness, Sakshi. In fact, he uses the Sanskrit word. When one is Sakshi, he says the rishis of India called this the Sakshi. Then one more reference to him. Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul, says you become free of all turmoil, all conflict, all agitation. When you see Jnana. Jnana is about seeing. When you see that that you are not that person who is having all these problems. The one who is suffering, the one who is in conflict, one who sometimes hopes to solve all one's problems very soon, or the one who at times is so desperate or hopeless. I have no hope. My life is all going to be suffering, suffering, and suffering. In this way, many a time you and I lose hope, right? So I lose hope, or I am optimistic. I'm going to solve problems, or I have given up. Who is this I? Michael Singer says, when you see that that person who is in tremendous conflict is not you, when you see it is not you, then there is freedom. My God, that is what Bhagavad Gita says. In chapter 5, Lord Krishna says, a wise person, that means someone who has that jnana, knows at all the time, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. At all the time means Pashyan Khandvan Sprashan Jigran Ashnan Gachan Swapan Pralapan Visrajan Granhan Unmishan Nimishan Napi. While seeing, while hearing, while touching, while getting up, while sitting down, while drinking, while eating, while sleeping, while waking up, while opening your eyes, while closing your eyes. Oh my God. For students of Sanskrit grammar, those two verses in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, provide a string of present participles. Pashyan, Shrindvan, Sprishan, Jigran, Ashnan, Gachan, Swapan, Shwasan, Pralapan, Visrajan, Grannan, Unmishan, Nimishan, Napi, Naiva Kinchit Karomiti, Yukto Manyeta Tattvavit, Indriyani Indriyarteshu Vartante, Iti Dharayan. The wise one, the awakened one, understands, I am not doing. In fact, sometimes these teachings look like very abstract. We say, not my cup of tea, not in this life. I have a long way to go. Dear friends, This idea of a long way to go, this idea of I will need more time is part of the illusion, is part of the error, is part of our Bhranti, Brahma, delusion. Time is delusion. Time is self, is the big prominent aspect of Maya. If you think I will take a long time, someone like Ramana Maharshi would ask you, hold on, what do you mean by time? What is meant by long time? Is there really something called time? We say, what do you mean? There is time, of course. Time, space are the other side of this illusion called ego. When there is ego, there is space, there is time, there is development, there is degradation, there is growing, there is decaying, there is self-improvement, and there is self-decay. Friends, all this is part of avidya bhumi, part of the error domain. The Vedanta says to us, and Bhagavad Gita is one of the most excellent pieces on Vedanta. Sarva Upanishadaha Gavaha. If Upanishads, the Vedanta, is like cows, Dugdam Gita Amritam Mahat. The very milk that is drawn from those cows is Bhagavad Gita. All right, what is our conclusion? What are we arriving at? We say, when you and I are not mature, and it is not something to do with time or place or any other thing. Actually, all those gradations within the avidya bhumi do not mean much. They are all conclusions, but in a manner of saying. When you think you are immature, in a manner of saying, you mean we are not immature? Can't say. The dullest person today could be freed from everything very next day. Someone who regards himself as unintelligent may not really be unintelligent. The problem that you and I have is we measure our intelligence in terms of a whole lot of subjects of the world. Someone has done a PhD in mathematics, whereas I failed 3 times and then could not go beyond 10th standard, let us say. We come to the conclusion that mastery over mathematics is a sign of intelligence. It is not. As regards liberation, it's a totally different viveka. Atmanatma viveka is totally different. There is a certain sharpness required, but it is different from what is required in mastering so many university subjects. Therefore, we have amidst us even today someone, Mata Amritanandamayi, went only up to 4th standard. Today she is guiding thousands, tens of thousands of people. In fact, the Vice Chancellor of Mata Amritanandamayi's University in Coimbatore, Professor Venkat Rangan, he was 2 years junior to me long back when we were students. I know him from that time. He is a wonderful, brilliant boy from Mysore. Right when he was doing BTech in IIT Madras, he was a blue-eyed boy with regard to those engineering subjects. He goes on to do MS and PhD, and then he was in a short period a tenured professor in University of California, San Diego, UC San Diego. I had the pleasure of meeting him when he was holding that position. And today, with all that knowledge of computer science, and he was a tenured professor at a reputed University of America, he gave that up. He serves, and you ask him, what are you? He will first say, I am a devotee of Amma. He is a devotee of Mata Amritanandamayi. And secondly, he says, yeah, I am sitting in the chair of the Vice Chancellor of Amrita University in Coimbatore. So, see, he saw that the intelligence that was required to get MS and PhD and then guide people in computer science was not setting him free. The intelligence that was required to set him free, he saw. You and I also will realize that this is a different ball game. This is a different challenge. So here comes the issue. How do we place bhakti? How do we place jnana? When we do not see that it is asking for something different, a different approach, we go in circles. We go on reading books, and some of us go on writing books, giving lectures. It's not lectures given, lectures heard, books read, or books written, which can set us free. We see when the necessary spiritual insight dawns upon us, which is marked by a different viveka, not the viveka that is required in the market. If you have to work in stock market, you need a certain viveka. Which stock and which share will likely give you large benefits quickly, and which stocks, which shares, investing in which company is likely to pull you down. That viveka is very different. But a certain viveka in the context of dharma. Alas, many of us who may have great university degrees do not have viveka when it comes to dharma, when it comes to satya and asatya, when it comes to karya and akarya. Don't we again and again see people who are Harvard educated or Oxford and Cambridge educated or whatever? Don't we see them in the center of a storm, in the eye of a storm of some scandal, financial and otherwise? What does it show? That intelligence which made them master subjects and go to high positions, first in the university, later on maybe in the corporate world, etc. With due respect to that, we don't mean to reject it has its place, failed in the matter of dharma. They did things which were unlawful, unethical, and whatever. That means the viveka required for adhyatma vidya, the viveka required for spirituality, and then the vairagya are something else. And when that is lacking in us, we somehow are caught, we come out stuck with these materialistic pursuits. What happens is Gita's teachings come handy on different criteria. Then the karma yoga of Gita is valuable to us. Bhakti yoga is valuable. Jnana yoga of the nature of conceptual learning is valuable at that level. What I mean, a number of spiritual practices which are different, which are distinct. Take, for example, chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. He talks of some 12 and additional yajnas. Dravya yajnas, tapo yajnas, jnana yajnas, swadhyaya yajna, then pranayama yajna, and number of yajnas. Over there, the word yajna could loosely stand for different spiritual practices. All of them do apply to us when we don't have the necessary viveka and vairagya. We do all of them. But when there is sufficient viveka vairagya, we come to a higher plane. That is where higher forms of bhakti, higher forms of jnana become very valid. Sri Ramana Maharshi said, as regards liberation, there are two paths. Either surrender, that is called bhakti, or inquire. Being a champion of self-inquiry, who am I inquiry, he clarified at another place that any other path towards the end necessarily raises in your bosom the question, who am I? You may be doing bhakti, you may be doing some shastradhyayana, you may be doing some chintana, vichara, manthana, but there will be a question rising in you. Okay, at this moment, who is studying this Upanishad? At this moment, who is doing japa? At this moment, let japa be whatever it is, but who is doing it? You know, when you have that question, who is doing? And answer is I. What I means what? What is this I? To make one last reference again to Michael Singer, amidst all our mental chatter, if an out of the way question were to come to us, hold on, who has this problem? I have a conflict with my husband. I have a conflict with my business partner. Or I, along with people of my community, have a conflict with those people who belong to another community. What do I do now? Some kind of such question comes to us. In between, an out of box question arises in us. When I say, what do I do? Who is this I? And when that question gathers momentum, when that question actually comes across as truly meaningful, not out of sentiment or not out of you are reading some book. Some book might have said, who am I is the biggest question in spirituality. Who am I is the $1,000,000 question. Of all questions under the sun, the greatest question in life is who am I? Some book may say, some Deepak Chopra, some popular author might say, and you and I are impressed by it, and we also may tell our friends. Speakers like me can quote it for next 7 days at a stretch in every lecture. But that doesn't mean that question has become truly meaningful to us. We are taking it from there and quoting here. We have a certain appreciation of it, but it is not a burning question in us. But then, when by God's grace, by some dint of hard work, by sincerity, or as Nisargadatta Maharaja used to say, by being earnest, many of us are not earnest. Many of us don't do something because it is the calling from our heart, but we see some benefit, some profit. I had a visitor yesterday who was talking about some Vedika Gurukula. A lot of boys are studying Vedas there from childhood. And we were appreciating, oh, those little boys, how nicely they chant the Vedas and so on. Both of us appreciated one hand, but then that visitor to me said, but Swamiji, uh, yeah, it is wonderful to hear those little boys chanting Vedas, but all of them have come to this Vedic Gurukula because they have no other option, no other exposure. As they get older, if they get a chance to learn some computers, go to big cities, get some job in some company, they would leave all this and go. Then we said, well, that is a problem everywhere. Why blame those boys? We ourselves were like that, if not are like that. Our materialistic tendencies make us value some fancied job, some reflected glory. I'm working for that kind of multinational company. There's some kind of. This is called spiritual unripeness. We are not ripe spiritually. So, whatever it is, that is where most humanity is. But then, by satsanga, by divine grace, by some mysterious change in us, the question, who am I, comes in us, rises in us very spontaneously, very naturally. Like in olden days, we would ask, looking at something, how much does that cost? Or what is the land price here? Or how do you go to such place? So it comes because of our vasanas. We are interested in something related to the money or pleasure or position, etc. In that way, naturally, if there is a question rising in us, who am I? I was at one time very young, then I was middle-aged, now I am old. But behind the child and the young man or lady and the old person, who am I actually? If this way it rises, then we are ready for that purest jnana. I must clarify here that jnana yoga, in most of it or most part of it, is marked by studying, discussing, thinking, and so on. Shastradhyayana. But the higher aspect of Jnana Yoga doesn't really go away from Shastra, but the higher aspect of Jnana grapples with the subtlest revelations of those very Shastras. The Shastras, the Upanishads, the Vedanta has made some very subtle, sukshma revelations. The revelation that our true nature is Sat and Chit. And if we are grappling with that, we are really passionate about understanding how, in what way am I pure awareness. Then, friends, that is when Jnana becomes Agni. Gita says, Jnanagni Dagda Karmanam Tamahu Panditam Buddha. That person is enlightened, in whose case the fire, the flame of right understanding has burnt completely all the karmas. Therefore, does Gita teach Bhakti or Jnana? Really, with no conflict between the two, Bhakti, as it rises and takes the form of para bhakti, pure devotion, it has to have the backing of Jnana. In Parabhakti, as you know, the Bhakta doesn't ask for anything. Most of you have been students of the Gita for a long time. In chapter 7, Sri Krishna talks about 4 kinds of bhakti. Chaturvidha bhajante mam janaha sukritin artaha jijnasuhu artharti jnanicha bharatarsha. To be relieved of some affliction, some big adversity, artha. To be relieved of some sankata, people go to Venkata Ramana. So, sankata, some affliction, that is artha. Then there are people who just want more and more knowledge. They are very close to this pure thing, but their priority is slightly different. Rather than the understanding that liberates them, they want such understanding whereby they are great scholars. They get certain satisfaction in their buddhi. I know more, I know, I have better grip on various subjects and so on. Arto, jitnasu, artharti, of course, for wealth and position. But putting these 3 on one side, Sri Krishna talks about Jnani and then praises Jnani as the dearest to him. That is the Nishkama Bhakta. And he is called Jnani. Chaturvedaha Bhaktaha, 4 Bhaktas, Chaturvedaha Bhajante Mam. And the 4th one, rather than being called as this Bhakta or that Bhakta, he is called Jnani. Because that Parabhakti is no different from Jnana. That Bhakta, Parabhakta, outwardly may be praising the Lord, worshipping the Lord, getting emotional with tears in his eyes, in her eyes, when there is a mention of God, like Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna would cry, would become emotional talking about Mother Kali. He was a Jnani. Therefore, Vivekananda made a great statement, wonderful statement. Vivekananda said, my Guru is Jnani outside, my Guru is Bhakta outside but Jnani inside. I am a Jnani outside but a Bhakta inside. Very witty statement. We look at Vivekananda and respect him for his magnificent knowledge. But he said, I am a Bhakta inside. We look at Sri Ramakrishna and admire his childlike love for Mother Kali. But he was a Jnani inside. Therefore, Jnana and Bhakti are no different, but for technical reasons, we would again say, Jnana Devatu Kaivalyam. That is, it is through a total change in understanding. I am this ego. I am the one who lost. I am the one who committed sin. I am the one who rose. I am the one who was felicitated. I am the one who is nowadays neglected. At one time I was respected. Hundreds such thoughts come to all of us in various contexts. But this I, imagine, is understood to be not true. This I who was good or bad, and now who is bad or good, this I is not true. This ahankara is false. Then what is true? I am. Indescribable. I am full stop. I am period. That's how they describe it. So that rediscovery, so we call it an awakening, that is jnana and that is inseparable from parabhakti. So what am I saying? On lower levels of perception, lower levels of understanding, jnana is different, bhakti is different, they are packaged differently, but as we rise higher, it is essentially jnana which sets us free, but it may jolly well express in the case of many saints as spontaneous bhakti, parabhakti, nishkama bhakti. Thus, without mincing words, without leaving you in some kind of ambiguity, saying everything is one, I wish to say towards the end that Gita teaches jnana, liberating wisdom, but shows bhakti to have tremendous capacity in it to bring us to that jnana. That bhakti which brings us to that highest liberating wisdom takes the form of parabhakti, and then in that sense we said they are one. However, otherwise nothing to leave unanswered. Jnana is the top. Therefore, Shankaracharya and others have said in no ambiguous terms, in clear terms, that Gita is the sara, it is the essence of Upanishadic wisdom. Gita is jnana, purest jnana, with all other sadhanas being given appropriate place. And pure bhakti is one with jnana. In precise language, it is jnana who is on top. Gita is moksha shastra primarily, but for vast number of people, Gita is dharma shastra. That is, what is to be done, what is not to be done. Gita, for a large number of people, including Mahatma Gandhi and Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Vinoba Bhave and so on, because those people were much involved in social service, politics, and so on. For them, it was all about Nishkama Karma. So Gandhi called it Anasakti Yoga. It is about doing things without selfish motives. Asakti meaning selfish motive. Tilak called it Karma Rahasya, and Vinoba also threw a lot of light on doing work. So when you are taking the context of doing work, discharging duties, all the noble values come. Therefore, I called it Dharma Shastra in that sense. Noble values, being humble, being straightforward, not being deceptive, being clean outwardly and inwardly, being respectful to elders, being respectful to one's teachers, and being truthful above all, being not hurting, that is ahimsa. So, number of human values are of course taught by Bhagavad Gita. And when you look at the human values and right attitudes, right outlooks when we are handling some situations, it comes across as an excellent work that teaches us dharma. But when we go deeper, that very Bhagavad Gita is a source of the wisdom that sets us free, which is moksha. Dharma Shastra and Moksha Shastra, these two are the broad camps, categories of entire Adhyatma Vidya. From a messed up, disintegrated, disturbed life, if we integrate, we have a better sense of right living. Then we have come successfully to the first category, dharma, and then we inquire further. In essence, it is inquiry, inquiry, and inquiry all the way. Some people say it is awareness, awareness, awareness all the way. Because it is lack of awareness that we tell lies. It is in lack of awareness that we deceive. It is in lack of proper awareness that we show ourselves as something else, pretend. We do 100 wrong things because we are not aware of the entire scenario. As we become aware, as there is heightened awareness, enhanced awareness, call it as there is extended awareness, then we will not tell lies. We will not deceive. Impossible. Therefore, it is also true to say that it's inquiry all the way, it's awareness all the way. Even greater and purer forms of bhakti come to us when we are aware of life's vicissitudes, different dimensions of life, when we are aware of the utter limitations of this limited mind of ours. Earlier we thought we know everything, therefore we were acting, in a wrong way. When we know that this intellect doesn't have unlimited capacity, we become humble, we become devoted to God. God is no other than unlimited intelligence. The ego is limited intelligence. When the limited intelligence realizes its limitations, it turns towards God. When it doesn't realize its own limitations, it acts as though very smart, which it is not. Friends, therefore, all of us arrive at a very, very transformative understanding. That is Jnana. That is the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. Everything else leads to it, and some of the purest stuff sits alongside, along with that highest Jnana. Therefore, we give the highest position to Jnana in Bhagavad Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gita Mutaduhe Namah. Hari.
Hari Om, Swamiji. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, people can chat on.
I request Vasudev to read out chat questions. I mean,
so
if
there's a question from R.N. Ramachandran.
please.
He says, Swamiji, how does surrender alone bring knowledge while some refuse to study on knowledge? What is real surrender and how does avidya get eliminated?
In real surrender, it is not just some emotions. In real surrender, one lets go of one's personal attachments. So you raised the issue of somebody refuses to study. Now, if this person who refuses to study realizes that much of that refusal was because of a certain adamant, stubborn, you know, behavior, and if he is truly surrendering, in that true surrender, in that atmosphere of true surrender, he definitely will not remain stubborn. If he sees that I need some clarity, which I don't have now, he will cooperate with study. Certainly, whatever is essential study, whatever is such study that eliminates a wrong notion and gives right perception, a person who has surrendered cannot turn away from it, because the true meaning of surrender is not to insist just for the sake of insisting. So surrender has to open that person up for study, may not be for any study and every study, but such study where some of his uh, inhibitions, some of these things where he is stuck are sorted out. So in true surrender, one cannot remain adamant.
Thank you, Swamiji. There's one question by Sri Guru Prasad. How important is meditation in spiritual practice?
Like it is in the, yeah, how important is meditation in spiritual practice?
In spiritual practice.
In what?
Spiritual practice.
Correct, in spiritual practice. Yeah. Meditation is actually very important. That is, meditation actually again is on many levels vertically, and it is spread out horizontally. There are many kinds of meditation, horizontally speaking, varieties, and then there are vertical levels in terms of maturity. Someone could do meditation in an immature way, with full of willpower and so on. Someone could do it on a mature, higher level, where there is more than willpower, there is letting go. There is letting go of I, me, and my. So, why is meditation important? Most of us who may read, who may talk, etc., have this mind which is overactive, always talking, always chattering, maybe on philosophical subjects, but the mind has to calm down. Quietude of the mind, economy of thought. You may look at it that way. Economy of thoughts. Too many thoughts or repetition of thoughts or going round and round about same topic makes the mind very weak. So it is through meditation, assisted by sometimes a symbol, a mantra, assisted by breath observation, assisted by listening to some instrumental music. In various ways, meditation typically takes the assistance of supports. They are called alambana. And meditation reduces the wastage of energy in our mind. So when our mind becomes more energetic, because all that waste is stopped now, then it can go more intensely with inquiry. Therefore, no matter where, on what path we are walking, meditation can be a great help. Therefore, sometime we must sit quietly. We must put aside everything and do meditation which are good at, or we feel at home, because different people, that's where I said horizontally, somebody is happy with breath observation, somebody is happy with some pranayama, somebody is happy with mantra japa, somebody looks at form of God and taking that as the support, lets go of thoughts of so many other activities, matters of his life.
ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಎನ್ಕ್ವೈರಿ, ನಾಟ್ ದಿ ಅದರ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್. ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೀಪ್ ಆನ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಎನ್ಕ್ವೈರಿ. ಐ ಮೀನ್ ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಇಸ್ ದಟ್. ಅಂಡ್ ಕೆಲವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮೆಡಿಟೇಷನ್ ಗಂಟುಗಟ್ಲೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ some of they are not advocating. I learned that even Swami Chidananda was not advocating this. ಅದು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ go and do some work ಅಂತೆ. There is some confusion about it.
That is because in every matter, people go to some unhealthy extremes. Somebody gets so excited by meditation and simply sits for hours and hours and gets into some kind of dullness. Then people like Swami Chidananda rightly say, study. You don't have a higher understanding. You are just stuck with a lower understanding. And you are doing those hours and hours of meditation like a dogged practice, just tying yourself to that level of maturity. So this keeping in mind some unhealthy turns that meditation takes place, we are asked to study. But then there is other extreme. Those who study go round and round in conceptual, activity. They just translate this shloka from English to Kannada, from Sanskrit to English, and they are just doing well. Such people who are restless, you learn to keep quiet. Therefore, finally, everybody should closely observe what is happening, what one is doing with one's mind. Have I made my mind dull through meditation? Then I better study a little, inquire, discuss. And there are other people who discover that in the name of spiritual study, we have just become more and more bookish. We are able to talk, but when actually desires, etc., rise, we fall flat. Therefore, I better sit quietly and handle my mind. So one has to be honest to oneself. True meditation is never a problem, but in the case of those who are asked to study, their meditation has gone little, off track, or it has slipped from the right path.
Thank you, Swamiji. There's one more question. When you surrender, then no study is needed because we get all the knowledge because of surrender, isn't it, Swamiji?
All this, begs a question. The questioner has visualized surrender on a very high level, but hardly anyone is capable of that high level of surrender. Otherwise, true. If someone has surrendered, then there is no need for study, nor does one resist study. Because in the highest surrender, there is neither clinging to something nor avoiding something. You neither have raga to anything nor dvesha to anything. But generally, we ask people to not stop Shastra Dhyana. Even a little bit of keeping in touch with Shastra is helpful, because in the name of surrender, believing that they have surrendered, they actually might have developed what is called a resistance. See, it's one thing you go to a movie because you have no interest in fun and mauj masti. It is another to come under some ideological concept. I have given up going to movies. It is all for worldly people. I'm advanced. Suppose there is some kind of ego over there, then he's not going to movie. He is hardly any spiritual virtue. That's what we call resistance. Someone has a resistance to money, to women, to pleasure, etc. Then spiritually speaking, that person is stuck. True wisdom neither is attached to anything nor resists anything. So this person who talks of surrender should re-examine if there is that pure form of surrender where there is no resistance.
Thank you, Swamiji. Dr. Venkatachalapati has raised his hand. Is there any question you can type, Doctor?
Yes, sir. How do you define moksha and how that moksha will be attaining a person?
Yes, moksha is defined as liberation, that's translation. It is liberation from sorrow forever. Dukkasya atyantika nivritti. Everything else puts an end to our sorrow for a while. Then we are back with same problem or with a new problem. So moksha means release. You are released from sorrow, from any kind of incompleteness, inadequacy for good, never to return. So how does one attain moksha? As we said in the lecture, when one awakens to a new understanding of who one is. Who am I? In that inquiry, one comes upon an understanding where not a trace of attachment or identification to the personality. Normally, when we ask who am I, we have some description. Even people in spirituality, they say, who am I? I have been a Vedanta student for 20 years now, and I think I am quite an advanced Vedanta. To say I am a Vedanta student also is an identification. To say I am a good meditator is an identification. So, no identification. That is the means to liberation, which comes about by inquiry. You have to question every identification of yourself. By inquiry, by Shastradhyayana, going hand in hand, that total negation, the putting aside all self-judgments happens. Absence of self-judgment is the means to liberation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Swamiji. There is one question from Sri Janki Ram. From the apex, who can be considered as a benchmark or role model for surrender, Kunti or Hanuman?
We place Hanuman way higher, and Kunti is also appreciated based on some scenarios, some conversations. In some contexts, yes, she has said things which have raised our eyebrows. When she said to Sri Krishna, give me more and more difficulty, because that is when I will remember you. Out of box answers. But Hanuman, from his birth itself, was exceptionally divine. Therefore, that is my 2 cents. But I don't know Mahabharata so much. I don't know much about Kunti really. But whatever little I have read or heard, in certain contexts has placed her very high. Otherwise, she had her attachments. She was so sorrowful when Karna died, and she had her ups and downs. I'm not sure whether she had surrendered so fully. I would imagine Hanuman was higher.
There is one more question from Sri Ramchandran. Swamiji, Vedantic meditation requires the repetition of Mahavakya with meaning for a long time to assimilate and internalize the knowledge and get the Jnana support available whenever needed in real life.
Well said. Practically, that is how it goes. Practically, in the sense, as we see cases, though technically and theoretically, this time itself is a part of the illusion. That is fine. That is not contrary to what we say practically. In the case of in real life case studies, it requires, as the questioner has very rightly said, repetition of Mahavakya, and he has carefully added with meaning, not just repeating like a parrot. Repetition of Mahavakya with meaning, and then continued study also, Jnana support. Yeah. So that's how great teachers like Swami Paramarthananji have said. Vedanta requires systematic, continued study, self-application. Don't take it casually. Don't suddenly start acting like some Ramana Maharshi or somebody. They are exceptions to the rule. They have come with some tremendous amount of pura sanskara. So they just get enlightened so easily. We have bags and bags full of pura samskaras. We are like the frog that one day goes up, but next day comes down by double the distance or height. So that is well expressed by Mr. Ramachandran.
Thank you, Swamiji. There are many appreciations, one from Srimati Brahmini, one from Srimati Katyayani, and another from Srimati Rupa, and Sri Jankiram, and many others. So many people, Srimati Ramamani also has appreciated. So many people have appreciated the talk and the interaction with clarifications through question and answers. Are there any more questions before we proceed? We have one or two questions that we can take. If there aren't, we'll proceed with meditation and the next program. Uma Ore, you have raised your hand. Please, any questions you have? Would you want to type the question or unmute and ask? Uma Murthy? Oh, lowered. Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you. So, if there are no more questions, we would like to thank Swamiji